And we're live, guys. What's up? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current, episode 17. We're here with Ray Britton. We're going to be talking about fishing in the coastal rivers for trout. So we got a 4-part trout series. I don't know what, we're on part 3 right now. Super excited, man. Good show, Judson. You ready to come on the camera, man?
I'm ready, man.
Yeah, we are, dude.
I'm always sitting here pulling my Facebook up last minute.
Yeah, just making sure everything works. So
yes, sir.
if you guys are watching, be sure to give us a comment, like, thumbs up, share. Let us know you can hear us well and see us. Super excited to have you guys on and watching the show. What's up, Cameron? See you on there, man. So excited. Dude, so yeah, let us know where you're watching from. Be sure to like and share. I don't think we have anything to give away this week, do we?
No, just some knowledge and some fishing spots.
We got some knowledge and fishing spots. So we'll think of something to give away later this week, maybe. Maybe we'll do that on our Facebook or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Or Instagram. So we'll keep you guys up to date with that. So anyway, make sure you let us know where you're watching from. And, share the show. What's up, man? Nick, Jason, everybody watching, everybody live. I feel kind of bad for the people who listen to our podcast because they don't get the live experience, but they got to kind of listen to all this stuff up front, which,
for
whatever.
Sure.
Watch the live show. It's more fun.
And the podcast. Watch both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of podcasts, if you don't get to listen to or watch the show live, make sure you jump on iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher or I don't know, wherever podcasts are, and go check it out, man. Go download our podcast.
For sure. And we usually intrigue y'all by giving you something. But today, if you really like us, please share this on your Facebook right now. It helps us grow more viewers.
If we don't get 50 shares, we're not coming back next week.
You got to share it 50 times for us to do anything else. I'm just kidding.
But we're not that vain. Is that what I guess that's the proper word, vain?
We're not that vain.
Yeah, we're not that vain. We don't care. We just like doing what we do.
We do.
That's awesome, man.
And we want to reach as many people as possible. So just share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, share it with your mom next time you have dinner with her. Share it with anybody, and we will. We'll see y'all next time. That was a great show.
In particular, share with somebody from Louisiana. For some reason, on our podcast, we have not had anybody from Louisiana tracked that actually has listened to the episode or the show. I don't know what's going on, man. A lot of good fishing there. Talk about Louisiana a lot on our show.
A lot of people down there, I don't think, like me very much. Going down there as an out-of-town guide, I think that I'm hated by that state.
Okay. So that's the reason.
That's probably what it is.
Okay, they see your name on there. Like, we're not listening to those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get to the sponsors. And we got Ray in the studio. Super excited, man. He drove down and hanging out with us, so we'll get to him as quick as we can here. So we'll hit some sponsors. Here we go. iStrike. iStrike has got a discount code, Eastern Current 10. And Dave Flad was sending me some screenshots where people are ordering and using that code, so it works. So make sure you go check that out. They got up to 40% off, and I guess that's an additional 10%?
Yeah, additional 10% off the top of what can you already get 40% off if you buy in bulk.
If you buy in bulk, yeah.
So you can really save some money.
So go check those guys out. Sea-Tow, you don't want to get stuck. Maybe we can share some stories. I'm going to ask these guys some stories here about getting stuck in the mud, see if they had to use Sea-Tow. AFCO is great, man. They hook us up. They got some great products.
We've got some cool stuff coming to us from AFCO here soon. We're going to be giving away, so we can't tell you what it is yet, but we're pretty excited about it.
Any fall stuff, I guess? Some new fall stuff?
No, it's the...
Oh, yeah, it's that thing.
It's that
thing. We're going to let you guys simmer on that. That's a big one. That's a big one. So we got Eastern Angling. Jud Brock right here is going to take you out fishing. We're actually going to go next week, me and my father-in-law. Marshwear, another great product for clothing, so go check out their website. Thorpe Creative, we can make some custom clothing for you. Smoothie King, which I forgot to get smoothies today, pretty lame. CT Custom Lures is a good friend of ours, Cody, and he makes flies. So
did you see that snake fly he did?
Dude, sick,
that was
man.
so sick.
That thing was so baller.
I would stick that thing in the back of my neck. That'd be so scary.
I was trying to figure. I'm like, I'm gonna get with him and see if I can test throw it or something with no hook. Can you make me one without a hook?
Put a piece of foam over the hook point, please.
Yep. And then the last but not least, KBT Realty. That is my new real estate team that I'm working with. So if you need a house, come check it out, man. Come buy a house, sell your house.
The offer still stands. First person to buy a house with Billy, I'll give him a free fishing trip.
That's worth buying a house.
Yeah.
That's worth a long-term investment.
It's a $180,000 fishing trip. If you can think of it that way.
Yeah. That's perfect. If you buy $1 million home, then we'll give you two fishing trips. So,
I get a little bit of Billy's commish on that one, though.
Yeah, super excited. And I'll actually share, I don't know why we haven't been doing this. I just thought of this like an epiphany. Like, we'll share our sponsor links below so you can check out all their websites and all that kind of stuff, and support those businesses as they hook us up and get us through this, man. We love partners. We love partnering with all of our all of our sponsors and co-promoting and love their products. So,
we do. We
cool,
sure
man.
do.
Well, Jud, let's talk about a little bit about what's happening on the water, and then we'll get Ray on here and get rocking.
Yeah, well, I got to be honest. I dipped out of town for a few days and went up to the mountains and to Billy, kind of near Billy's old stomping grounds, and did a little smallmouth bass fishing the past few days. Really good change of pace, but I think Ray'd agree with me too. And we're like on the cusp of fall fishing. You know, we've had a few days of it, you know, and it's here just barely, but the next good cold snap, I feel like the trout are gonna be really firing off, and the albacore will be here real good. The albacore were here great. Now they've kind of disappeared a little bit. And the red fishing's been real good. Redfish are, you know, a lot of them around the inlets with that mullet run still trickling out, and those fish are still in some of their normal spots. But I've been telling people, like, if you really want to catch redfish, kind of focus on your spots that might be closer to the inlet. Fish on the jetties, fish in the inlets as well, and on some of those shoals, and you'll start to catch some fish out there too. But yeah, the fishing's been good. We're, like I said, just right on the cusp of really breaking into good fall trout fishing though.
Yeah.
And, trout fishing's already been great, but it's going to get better. So I think this series is right on time.
Dude, awesome, man. And if you're watching and you caught a dirty 30, let us know. Still waiting to give one of these bad boys away to the first person of our audience who catches a dirty 30 and sends it to us and also submits it to the Speckled Truth. Really appreciate Christopher Bush being on the show with us, or Chris Bush, Captain Chris. Man, what a good show. He's actually on this live stream watching. He said, hey, I'm from Louisiana. Does that count?
That counts, Chris. Thanks, man.
That counts. Perfect. Well, dude, without further ado, man, let's do it. Let's bring the man of the hour on.
Let's do it.
Here we go. I'm going to bring up 3 cameras. What's up,
Boom.
Ray?
What's up, man?
What's up?
I probably should have put you in the middle, but too late now.
It's all good. It's all good.
What's happening, man?
Not much. How are you?
Dude, nothing much. Dude, tell me where you live from. I think is it how far is it from here? How far did you drive?
I'm in Holly Ridge.
Holly Ridge. Okay.
Yeah, I'm right down the road.
So not too far.
No.
For some reason, I was thinking you're like way up there somewhere.
No, I'm right down the road.
Oh, just right now. Okay, yeah. Perfect, man. Perfect. Well, dude, so what you been up to? What kind of fishing you been doing?
Drum fishing mainly. I switch up to trout pretty soon. I like for it to get cold.
Yeah.
I like to put on a sweater.
I do too.
That's when I like to start chasing them. Typically, this time of year, since I've started chartering, I'll drum fish a little longer now. And trout is my favorite fish to fish for. That's what I love to catch. For years, late August through September, I used to love to catch those things up the river on top water in late August, September. That hot August, even middle of the day, there's a bite that would go on up there. Last few years, 3, 4, 5 years, it's been a little slower. We had the winter kill a couple years ago, and it's just been off. But I'm hoping that it'll come back. Trout are resilient; they tend to come back no matter what.
Yeah.
But working in this industry now, it's been a little different than fishing like I fished personally. And so, right now it's drum. That's what we're doing. And when the trout show to where I can give my clients a good trip on trout, that's when I'll
switch over.
Yeah, and that's what I love to do. So I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it's, everybody, I talked to a few people today, oh, it's so gloomy outside, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's to me, it's coming.
Yeah, it's time. Yeah, dude. I know when we first talked, because we were talking earlier when we first started the podcast of having you come on, and you're like, dude, please save me for the trout show. I want to talk about trout. So appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah,
awesome.
No, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, dude. It's so much
Good
fun.
Good thing you got going on, and I'm glad you guys invited me.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely.
We're glad you came.
We're going to have some fun, man. I'm going to let Judson hammer you with questions, and I'm going to sit back and drink some water and hang out. And then
relax a little bit.
And then I'm going to do my specialty and ask some really dumb questions and have a pretty good time. So.
Your questions are usually the better ones. Mine are like way too staged, and yours are like good. Like, all right, I need this question answered.
Yeah, because I don't know how to fish very well. So I'm like, no, wait a second. You do what with the lure again?
Hey, I would say you know how to fish really well, or you're at least really lucky. Every time you go, you catch like the biggest fish I've ever seen.
Oh, so. Dude, I just go with really good guides. I've been on a trip with Ray.
Yeah, we fished.
Yeah, man, you guys had me reeling in Bonita. Like, I think I was busted up after that, man. I was just one after the other.
I don't think y'all were ready for what you were in for that day.
No, man, I totally wasn't.
I had him trolling planers commercial style.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we weren't exactly doing well, the bonita weren't cooperating that year. So I said, we're going to catch them because I like to eat them.
Yeah, yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And these two, him and Gary were looking at me like, what's this? And I've got, a couple 80s with some planers down.
And just
Yeah.
whacking them.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
old Gary
Bailing them over the
at
back
the
until
fish
they
post.
popped up. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. And then it got to the point where they were both just like, Billy, grab the rod. Like,
Grab the
Billy,
rod,
grab
Billy.
the rod. You're the youngest dude on the boat. Grab the rod. I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Just beating me up. So that was a good time, man. So, and while we're talking about it here up front, dude, check out Ray's business. It's called Springtide Guide Service. You can check him out on Facebook, and make sure you go like his Facebook page and hit him up on Instagram. Same tag there.
If you want to see a lot of someone crushing redfish every day, go follow his Instagram. I'm always like, dang, he's on them.
Get lucky every now and then like everybody else.
Well, dude,
That's
how
all it
did
is.
you even get into it, man? Give us a little backstory.
Yeah,
of it.
give us the whole backstory.
Well, family, really, it's something I always wanted to do. My uncle was a renowned captain up in the Chesapeake Bay, Captain Bill Sugg. He passed away a while back. His son, I think, is watching tonight, so I'll give him a shout out. But yeah, I mean, it kind of runs in the family. My mom was from up in Virginia, and they were big seafood eaters growing up. We ate seafood, we loved it. My dad was a big hunter. He wasn't really that big into saltwater fishing. He freshwater fished. But, as I got older, he retired on Camp Lejeune in 80. And as I got a little older, saltwater, loved surfing, was out there surfing, loved to fish, but mainly freshwater fished. And just, rolled up on some guys catching trout one night. And I'm like, what's this? And I mean, in a nutshell, that's how it happened.
What time of year was that?
That was in the fall.
In the fall?
That was back when that was the heyday. I mean, that heyday was nothing like what it had been 20 years prior.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that later. But, the watching these guys in a lineup just bailing these huge trout. I mean, I was done.
Yeah.
So done.
You were hooked.
Done. Yeah, just like that. And, then it was, okay, well, how do I do this? And had the wrong rod, wrong line, wrong lure, And I asked one of the guys, I'll never forget, this guy was like, Marine, ex-Marine, huge guy. I said, what are you doing to catch these fish? And I was a little kid. And he said, this ain't no fishing school, boy. That's how I started trout fishing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And 4 years later, I just stayed at it. And 4 years later, that same guy asked me what I was using. And
That's perfect.
And I said to the crowd, do you remember what you said to me 4 years prior? And I said, I do, but I'm not going to repeat it to you.
So if you're watching this show right now, mister, this ain't no fishing school.
That's right. No, we're talking about legends, though. These guys back then, they were the pioneers of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And these guys sat out there and had it figured out with no internet, with no help. I mean,
There's time, sweat, and blood and tears.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that was how it was back then. And
Yeah.
you learned that way, and that's how I learned was back then from old timers that eventually did take me in and would throw me a bone. And then a lot of it was just putting in the time to figure them out. And, here I sit 30 years later, and it's like, okay, well, I still ain't got it figured out.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. 30 years of fishing. I just turned 33 a few days ago, so I'm like, dude, you've been fishing basically all my life.
I just sat there and
that's
thought
awesome.
about it. I hadn't thought, I'm getting old, but yeah, it's been 30
That's what I was really trying to get at.
since
that
that
you're
night.
old, but that's awesome, man. Well, that's so cool that, I think that's the thing, especially what we're trying to create here is a little camaraderie and people helping each other out. And I think, and I always voice this opinion because even in business, people, I could tell 1,000 people, here's how you start a business like my business, and maybe one person will actually take action and do something with it. So a lot of people, especially in the fishing industry, get like a little weary, like, oh God, you guys are going to be talking about this, you're going to be talking about that. But really the key is like, we're trying to help out. We're not, I mean, there's programs out there and apps to buy and go find fishing spots if that's what you're into. But we just love to hear the stories.
For
We
sure.
love to hear that kind of stuff. We love to talk about the fishery, what it used to be like, what it is, how we can take care of it better now. All those types of things, man.
Definitely.
So that's
Few
cool
little
to
good
hear.
nuggets.
So many history.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
an important thing to say though is, yeah, we do have the internet. We've got information. I mean, here we are. We're putting it out tonight. We're beyond that point. There was a time where there was a group of guys who didn't talk in the New River and didn't talk here and there, and and I'm not one to put anybody's spots out there. That's not what I do. But
I thought that's what we were talking about. No.
but no, I mean, as far as things go, I mean, there is helping people get started. We're beyond the point of let's not share any information other than our little group. I mean,
Right.
it's over that. It's been blown out years ago.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of guys who've been in this magazine and that magazine, and that's already been done. So that's great. But the other thing is there are people that want to go fishing and catch a fish, and in the climate that we have, where the fishing is as such.
Yeah.
Not as great as it used to be. I don't mind helping anymore.
For sure.
I mean, I've crossed that bridge, and I'm not telling you where to go, but I'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah,
for
You
sure.
can give a
find it,
guy
yeah.
a spot, and it doesn't help him unless he knows the technique. And the technique, I think, is way more important than the spot.
For sure.
So
Dude, I agree.
For sure.
I
It's
just go with Judson, so I don't know.
no, I'd have to agree with you on that. It's tough. It's I don't even know. I'm just gonna let it be at that.
We'll just let it simmer, man.
Yeah,
it's
for
good.
sure. For
let
sure.
it marinate.
And I
Let it
think
marinate.
we just always like to tell people, because the post that I made on Instagram, which I think you got a little flack. A buddy of mine texted me. I think Jud got a little feedback on it. Was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing over there?" And we're like, "Oh," and then Jud's like, "Dude, we talked about this months ago. You're supposed to put we're going to talk about coastal river fishing,
Yeah.
not the New River."
So we're not talking about the New
New
River.
River.
We're
We're
talking
talking
about coastal rivers.
So what you're going to give us tonight is going to be applicable to
rivers.
multiple
For sure.
rivers.
We're actually talking about the new river that I fished just yesterday for smallmouth
That's
up in
it.
the mountains.
That's
Yeah,
it.
we're talking about smallmouth
That's
fishing.
it. Yep. No, but I'd like to bounce it off the Cape Fear, because you
For sure.
fished the Cape Fear. I fished the New River.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different fishery, current, no current.
Yep.
So it would be nice. It would help a lot of people in this area, I think, to talk about that.
Definitely.
So
Dude, let's get into
I'd say
it.
that
Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's definitely get into it. I was about to.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Go.
So let's talk about. I think that's a good first segment. We're talking about, because so many people here in this area are focused on seams, current, little drop offs, points, eddies, ledges, all that kind of stuff, which that does play in. I mean, even fishing up a New River, like current does help for sure. But
yeah.
but what would you say are you looking for in a spot when you're fishing a coastal river, both current rivers and non coast or spots without current? What are you looking for in a trout spot?
the first thing I look for is bait,
Okay.
period. That's it. That's number one for
Yep.
me. I mean, there's a lot of guys who do it one way or the other. For me, I find the bait first.
Yeah.
And then I go from there.
Okay.
I like to put myself where the bait is. And if I see a lot of bait, then I can just sit and watch them. And I kind of tend to be more of a deer hunter when I trout fish.
Yeah.
When I'm scouting, I like to go and I like to find a lot of bait, and then I just sit and watch it.
That's
And
cool.
sometimes I'll sit and watch it for a couple hours, and I'll try to put myself there, a couple hours before what I think is prime, and on whatever wind that I think is right. And I will throw and cast, but and I say this every time I do a seminar. People will go in the woods with before deer season. They don't have a gun,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they walk through the woods and
Yeah.
scout. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going to a bay for drum, or, I mean, this applies to all fishing. Go to an area and sit and wait through a tide cycle, have a sandwich and chill out. And I mean, if you got a family, don't make it so much about fishing one day. If you got 2 days to fish, is put the family on the boat, go put your beach chair in a spot where
Yeah.
you think you might want to
that's good.
fish, sit through a tide cycle and wait to see when does that bait actually come out of that creek, and is anything hitting them?
Yeah.
Because when have you ever been in a good bite when there wasn't bait fish getting busted?
Yeah. For trout, never.
So to sit there through a tide cycle and watch when does the bait go up, and write it down, make a log, put it in a notebook, I mean, that stuff helps you.
Yeah.
And when do they come out? You know, because some days they come out earlier, some days they come out later. Depends on, and that's another thing as far as tide goes. I want to stay on track, but it's not as much a thing of high and low as it is a level to me. You know, I want to see that tide. If the grass is here and high is here today and high is there tomorrow, there's where the mullet's coming out.
Oh, gotcha.
Like midway through the tide.
Well, it's not as much as a mid if you've got a higher high.
That's true.
Or a lower low.
What is it, about halfway down that normal cycle of grass?
It's whatever it is at that point.
Gotcha.
And that's where your scouting comes in. If you see that those fish are coming out, and this is something I've had to learn for chartering to really try to time it better.
Yeah.
If, you know, when I was just fishing on my own, I could just go and it didn't matter. I mean,
right.
You know, but just for example, drum fishing, but it really plays in well with trout.
Definitely.
If I'm in a bay and I've got one little piling that's sticking this far out of the water, and right here is where they're feeding. Now tomorrow, let's say you've got a tide that's a half a foot higher.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, and you get there and it's here at that same time an hour later.
Okay.
And they're not feeding. You just got to wait till it gets
down to there. I like that.
So it's not as much. So think about tide, but also think about level.
Yeah,
because when that water gets to a certain level in that environment that they're laying, that's what makes them move. That's what makes the magic happen.
Oh, gotcha.
That's a really good point. Not thinking about like midway through the falling tide. It's because it could be different depths still.
So look at, is it a higher high or a lower low? Look at those things.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Look at your level of tide. Don't just look at high. Don't just look at low. Get a tide chart that shows you the level and kind of take that in consideration, because you could fish another spot for another 30 minutes and bang them there and then run the tide down and then still show up there instead of an hour later, an hour and a half later. And that applies to trout too, a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, what would you say fishing an area without current? Because when you fish an area with current, it seems like trout a lot of times they sit in a little bit deeper water. They're looking for a break out of that current a little bit. But fishing in
no current,
in no current, do you feel, how does depth play in? What are you looking for depth wise?
So for me, depth is more of a thing where, so taking the New River into account here, there are times of the year when they are in the main river, which is summertime. Those fish move out of the creeks. It gets way too hot. Bait moves out. Everything's in the main river. A lot of them push out of there and migrate north, south. With the studies that I've read, who knows what they do. I mean, the more they study it, that's why I really have enjoyed watching the Chris Bush's stuff. Because I think he's onto something, because there's not a lot of studies out there. He's a great resource for moon phase and things like that.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed paying attention. But as far as the river's concerned, you've got summertime and you've got fall and winter. You've got the seasons. The fish move into the main body of the river in the summer. Just as a general rule here, in the fall, they tend to start pushing up into the creeks. Going into winter, they're going to move to the back of the creeks where the deeper holes are, to be able to run to a spot that, you know, as it cools, when it gets real cold, when winter's coming on, they can shoot to those deeper holes where the water is still warm, doesn't change as fast. But at the same time, they'll turn right around and come back out. You've got all that mud bottom up there, which is insulation, which holds heat. So as you get, it's North Carolina. It's cold one day, it's warm the next. So they're back there freezing. You know, it's not till, I don't know when it turns, but January, February, somewhere in there, the deeper water flips on the bottom. You've got that thermocline where they're hanging down in that still warm water in a deep hole. But as that starts to change, and even before then, if it turns warm and the bait pushes out, they push out with it.
Yeah.
And so you've got, you know, speaking for the New River, you've got the main body of the river. And I'll focus more on, let's talk about what's getting ready to happen. But what's getting ready to happen is these fish are going to be pushing up in the creeks. A lot of the mouths of these creeks are 4 foot, 3 foot, you know. There's some shallow creeks. There's a wide range of depths leading into the back of these creeks that they're going to head towards. When you get up towards Jacksonville, a lot of those creeks up there are a lot deeper in the mouth. Those tend to be harder ones to fish than the shallower ones. I mean, anytime you've got 16 foot to find them versus 4,
Right.
Yeah.
it's a little harder to find them. And how you approach it and how you fish for them is different. There's a lot of variables throughout the year, but as a general rule, going into fall, these fish start pushing up in these creeks, and they're going to be following bait, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to go and look at every creek and see kind of where the bait is. I watch the depth finder for schools of menhaden. I watch the top for mullet to see what kind of bait's in there. Then from there, I just kind of start poking around. Watch water temp. If the water temp's a little high, I might back out of there and kind of work my way back towards the mouth of the creek and work my way in. But, as far as depths go, I mean, we could probably talk for 4 hours just on depth.
Yeah.
I mean, sitting here thinking about it right now,
Yeah.
but I think to help people out more would be, how do you fish each depth
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
going into the fall would
Okay.
probably be a better way to approach it. And let's say you're going in a creek that's, 4 foot going into it. We'll start with the shallow creeks. How do you fish it? There's the question. I tie on 8 different things,
Yeah.
and I'm like, here we go. I mean, I'm starting fresh again myself
Yeah.
this year, like everybody else is. I do have a couple different lures that I like to search with, but every year it seems like, man, that worked great last year, and they're not touching it this year.
Yeah.
But typically, in 4 to 6 foot of water, 2 foot, 3 foot, and I like to fish really shallow too. Some of the biggest trout I've caught, most of the big trout I've caught in the river, are in 18 inches of water.
Wow.
And what's the water temp? That was a question on here, and that's kind of a curious question
I
I,
mean,
had.
we're
For
going-
that transition, that fall transition, what water temp are you
Yeah.
looking for? maybe?
When it starts getting below 70, that's when it starts getting right. I mean, gets in the 60s, 55, I love. I mean, that's getting into wintertime.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got to go, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, when Halloween hits, just go fishing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just keep going.
don't worry
Spooky.
about it, just go. But
And throw Mr. Spooky.
and I'll tell you a story about the spook real quick. Now that you mentioned that one,
Yeah.
Part of that growing up on Onslow Beach, I drum fished a lot on the beach, and there was an old sergeant. They called him Sergeant Major. I'll mention him by name, George Mason. To me, he's a legend. He used to have the motivator haircut, big old tall guy, smoked a cigar. I mean, he's a good buddy of mine
Yeah.
now. I met him years later, more formally, and we fish together now. But, I would go down there early in the morning on Onslow Beach, and nobody really fished a topwater back then, years ago. And this guy, we would be drum fishing and then ride down to the rip at the end,
Uh-huh.
and he'd be leaving with a couple stringers full of trout.
Wow.
Golly.
And I'm like, what's that funny thing he's got tied on there?
Yeah.
What is that? What is this guy doing here? And it didn't dawn on me. We didn't know anything about topwater back then. We just didn't. I didn't. A lot of guys did, but I didn't. And this is years ago. But that same guy, I'll say this, he was in the military, and he'd walk down to, he had access to all the creeks on the base. And people would say, it gets below 70. And this is going into temperature.
Yeah.
He would get down to a creek when they were froze over. And he would take his topwater and throw out there and use his topwater to bust
through the ice.
through the ice and make a path.
Wow.
And he would throw that thing out there, and he'd pop, 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 and he'd sit there and smoke his cigar, and every now and then he'd just twitch it. And I think he's caught more big fish on topwater in ice than anybody I know.
Golly, that's crazy.
So if you think it doesn't work when it's cold, that guy proved us all wrong there.
Yeah.
And he's the only guy I know that's done that, break ice to catch fish on top water.
Yeah, that's insane.
pretty good.
And he's done it.
Yeah.
I mean, so there you go. What are the temperatures? I've caught them on. I like 60s to 70 for topwater trout myself. That's when you're gonna have the best action. But all this stuff, I mean, all this stuff we say, there's still that. I mean, going back to like Ryan and his.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like another George to me. He just breaks the mold, and I'm throwing this 5-inch bait, and I mean, the dude's awesome to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cool to see guys doing that where they're not going to just fit the mold. They're going to change it up, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that was George. And, so all this stuff that I say, I don't know a thing when you're talking about a guy like that
Right.
Yeah.
breaking ice to catch a 7 and 8 pound trout.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah.
So if you
that's
want to
cool,
catch
man.
big trout, you need to throw massive baits or go ice fishing.
Or go ice fishing.
Go ice fishing.
Yeah. So depths, I don't know. I got a little sidetracked there.
No,
but
you're good. You're good. There's you can catch it like you're saying. You can catch trout in all different depths. It really just depends on getting to an area and understanding what's going on at that time.
when it's warm, you tend to work them faster.
Okay.
If you're in shallower water, I like to throw a stick bait or a hard bait, typically. MR17, Twitch and Wrap, X-Wrap, things like that. Any kind of hard bait. There's so many new ones out there now that they've just blown by me. Every time I go in Intercoastal or any tackle shop, they're like, hey, have you seen these? No, I haven't.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I haven't. And, like, I got stuff that works, and I'm kind of a old school,
You get that old soul, like, this worked. I'm going to do it again.
It's kind of a nostalgia thing in a way, but X-Wrap ain't really nostalgia either. I haven't thrown a regular mirror lure in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
So there you go. But there's a lot of good lures out there that are hard baits that work. And if you get online and you check them out, a lot of that stuff will pay off. But in 4 to 6 foot of water, to me, it's hard to beat something that just hovers 2 foot down and suspends because he's going to see it. And you're not going to hang up in a lot of stuff, and you can work it. So when it's a little warmer, starting off this early in the season, I tend to go to a, hard bait. When we get a cold snap or two, and it starts to cool that water off, and it slows them fish just a hair, but really makes them feed good. The storm shrimp's a hard one to beat.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's when I go to that, even in that 4 to 6 foot of water, just twitching that thing. And you throw it out, hold the rod tip high, pop it up, let it fall. Pop it up, let it fall.
And the storm is a really light shrimp as well, right?
Yeah, but,
just like the DOAs.
But
and the
we're
Voodoos.
talking about no current here.
Right, exactly.
So
exactly.
let's talk about that. I get confused because I've been fishing the inlets a little bit lately, but I tend to fish the inlet and then move to the river. But as far as no current, and what the old timers always said was the difference in fishing no current versus current is what separates the men from the boys.
Yeah.
You've got to make the lure do it. In current, you throw it out, you sweep it. The lure does what it's going to do.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot you can do other than make sure it gets to the bottom.
Yeah.
If it's getting to the bottom and you're jigging it, that lure is pretty much just going by him, and those fish are laying there with their face in the current, and they're either going to hit it or they're not. When you're up in the rivers and there's no current, you have to make that lure do a certain thing. And every lure does something a little different. And learning how to work each lure is key.
And is the current in those coastal rivers, is that controlled by the tide, I imagine, right?
Sometimes tide, but more often to me is wind. I mean, the
okay.
wind pushes it more, so you'll get a wind tide, which makes it real difficult at times.
Yeah.
And trying to peg the tide up there, even when you've been doing it for years,
It's
still
pretty
will throw
tough.
you off. Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha.
You know about when it's going to change, but then throw a different wind direction on it, and good luck. It's really weird in the river. But, that shallow water, starting off, you want to stick to a hard bait. But that being said, if you're throwing a soft plastic, some days they want soft plastics, you size down. You're not going to go up the river in shallow water and throw a 1/4 ounce jig head and it just goes kerplunk to the bottom. And that, I'll throw an 1/8 and a 1/16, real light stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll tend to either jig it or I'll just pull it steady. I love a bass assassin. I love to pull them steady, throw them out in just that steady, easy roll. Bam! I mean, they'll smack it. There's days when that's what they want. That storm shrimp seems like it's got to come up, got to go down, got to come up. X-Wrap, there's days where you work them faster. MR17, I don't know of another lure that's caught more big trout in the river. Me, personally, I've seen more caught on an MR17 than anything else. And its bigger cousin, it's not a bad one either, the 27. The guy that I fish tournaments with, he's kind of partial to that 27, and that's more of like Ryan's theory of less fish but quality fish.
Yeah.
And when we fish tournaments together, I tend to fish for putting something in the boat, and I'll go really small, tiny, to get something in the boat. And he sticks with, the guy's a machine. He'll grind it with a big bait all day, kind of like Ryan does.
Yeah.
And he pretty much won the tournament. Not won it. We were consistent. We were the only team to get, third place each time. And we were the only team to place in the top 3 the whole series last year. Got a second. We didn't win it, but we did okay. I was proud of that.
And what tournament series was that?
The Eastern Carolina Winter Trout Series.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Jud Brock puts that one on. It was a fun little local
that's
New
cool.
River tournament. It's all artificial, no live shrimp. So it was just, let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
And it was fun to do it. But there's something to be said for that big bait. And I hate to harp on that. But with Ryan, I really agree with it.
Yeah.
I can't fish that way chartering all the time. But
you got to put the numbers on the boat.
But if you're going up the river, put on something big.
Oh, we're talking about that. What's your ratio? No, I'm just kidding. What's your cast to catch ratio? I'm thinking about booking a trip. Oh man, dude, that's awesome to be able, like you're saying, to go out. And so I guess when you go out and you're trying to figure it out, so to speak, I feel like you've got a pretty good handle on it. But you're going out there with multiple things, multiple rods, and just working the waters.
I've got an arsenal of things that work in certain depths.
Yeah.
And as the season progresses and it gets colder, you tend to focus more on the deeper water. And then with that being said, all of a sudden it is North Carolina. It warms back up.
Oh, yeah.
We get a cold snap. It's cold. And you're not catching anything in the shallow, They tend to run to these holes, and all of a sudden you're catching them in the back of these creeks. And then it warms up. Start from the front and work your way back again, just like you did early in the season. And it's like, okay, here they are. They move a lot. They find that warm water. So you got to watch your temperature. 2 degrees up there makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 degrees can be everything. If you get to a spot and it's cold and you're not catching them, run till you find a little bit of warmer water and bait. And but it's find the bait, find the fish. The bait's not going to be where it's just chilly. They're going to be where they want to be, and they're easier to find on a depth finder than a trout is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen a trout on a depth finder. I don't.
Not that I know of. So one thing I wanted to say is, and kind of ask you as well, is just for people out there. Someone said, "Does anyone fish the Pamlico anymore?" And I would say that yes, people definitely fish it, but the New River fishes a lot for trout like the Pamlico does. Like you're getting in these areas with these bays and these creeks and maybe less current. And the trout kind of have, obviously you've got a much different kind of layout as far as the water they have to move throughout. But fishing them in these non-current areas and then transitioning and finding that warmer water, would you say they kind of fish the same way?
Yeah. It's people say they're overwhelmed to me all the time when they go up the river. To me, the river's a really small place when you actually get up there.
Yeah.
When you start whittling down where the bait is, what winds you can fish where, the time of year that they're going to be in certain places, it really whittles the area. And that's just doing it. And I get that. But when I go somewhere like the Pamlico, I see where they're coming from. I'm like, where do you go? And
right.
I fish it the same way as I do here. Like, where would they be? And I try to go up and fish those rivers. I don't do it often.
Yeah.
But when I do, I try to look at it the same way as I'm fishing. But that's a lot bigger area.
It's a lot bigger area for sure.
And it is intimidating.
It's very intimidating.
But the river can be intimidating unless you look at it like summertime, they're in the river. Going into fall, they're going to be in the creeks.
Yeah.
So you're whittling out a lot of the river already. You're saying, okay, now I got to go to these creeks. Well, pick you a few. Fish them from the front to the back. People say, how do you find the fish? You put on a lure and you fish it from front to back.
You fish. Yeah.
You fish. You go and you fish. But I do. I go and I'm lazy in a way. I go and sit a lot. I go up there and just ride up there, and I might fish half a day, and then I'll just go and I'll sit for a few hours and just eat a sandwich, listen to some music, and just watch the bait in an area where I know there's a lot of bait and see if anything's hitting it. I mean, you don't have to see them or catch them to know they're there. If they're feeding, you'll see them hitting bait. I mean, there's times where I've gone up there and saw them hitting bait, and I left and I picked my chart up the next day, and I went there on that tide and we caught them.
Yeah.
They're there. You know they're there. You see them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and what kind of bait fish are running in the wintertime?
I just mullet and menhaden.
Just mullet and
yeah.
menhaden.
I mean, I'm
Gotcha.
sure there's a lot of other stuff, mud minnows and things, but talking about bigger trout, they eat fish.
Yeah.
From what I've read, everything I've read is when they're younger, they eat a lot of shrimp. Not saying a bigger trout doesn't eat a shrimp, but when they're bigger, they tend to eat. And a common denominator on all the days that I've had that I've caught big fish up there, the big fish days in the river tend to be the nastiest days that you don't want to go. You don't want to leave the house. It's nasty. It's cold. But if you can get to these creeks, you can handle that river pounding you from there to the creek. And you get in these creeks and those are days when I will fish a variety of areas. But for me, I have always caught the biggest fish in shallow water on a nasty, rainy day.
Yeah.
Shallow water.
That's not my type of fishing, man. I'm a fair weather
No,
guy.
me too. Me too. But I've got some buddies that luckily push me into going, and that's the only reason I will go a lot of times. I don't charge it like I used to, but I do get fired up when, weather like we got today. It's just not cold enough today, but when you get that when it's cold and you've got to suit up with a couple layers and you've got to put the rain jacket on,
then that's when you're ready.
go. And, and even when it's blowing, that northeast blow is a pretty thing in the winter. It's nasty, but if you go back and look at every 30-inch fish that was caught in the New River last year and put it together on what was the weather pattern they were caught on, it was days where most people were sitting on the couch.
Yeah, it's trashy.
Yeah.
They're at home watching Jeopardy.
That's awesome.
I like to fish ahead of a front, but I mean, a lot of guys, and I've watched a couple of y'all's things, and they say, and that's a big deal. Barometers dropping ahead of a front is a big deal. I mean, you look at your bird feeders in the yards, the birds are eating the deer. I mean, everything. Wildlife can sense it. They know what's going on. And fish can too. When that barometer's dropping, fish tend to feed heavy before a front, and then you get the bluebird days after. But a front hits and it sits on you, and it's there, go. Because those big fish, that's when they'll slip up. That's what I have learned up that river is if you really want to catch the big ones, you got to be out there when nobody else wants to go. That's when I've seen them bite. That's when I've seen them slip up. I don't know if I've had many big fish on a pretty day, but every day I've caught. We had one day, a friend of mine, me and him went, and it was a front coming, and it was getting, it was going to be a good one. It was a pretty day, and we got up the river and wasn't much happening. And for about an hour, right before, we saw the clouds start rolling in, and it turned on. We were bailing 4 and 5 pounders over the side. And a spot we fished for a week and caught small fish, we caught big fish nonstop. And it came in and rained, and that was the coldest, nastiest ride I'd ever had back to the boat ramp.
But you were loving every bit of it.
Well, it shut off right when it hit, but that hour leading up to it was amazing. And on the same token, let that stuff set in and settle and just be nasty. Go fishing.
Go fish.
So I just saw this on the feed. Where is it? Jordan Rocca said long johns equal long trout.
That's it. That's it. Yes,
That's
sir.
awesome.
I like that.
And Chris Bush from Speckled Truth, he said, what's the salinity swing from the rivers to the bay areas that you're fishing, and how does that drive your decision on where to target big trout?
That's a good question. I did work for Marine Fisheries for a while, and I had a little checker for years to check the salinity. I don't own that machine anymore. It belonged to the state. So I dip my finger in the water on occasion. I'll say this, okay? And this goes back to, we talked about it earlier. A lot of the old timers used to say, if you get a lot of rain, it pushes the trout out of the creeks. That's what they always said. Ricky Kellum, he's a legend up there. He took a guy from state that was doing a project for college. And to me, that was one of the most interesting things I've ever read about trout. They went out, I don't know, I think they tagged like 4,000 trout. I mean, that's Ricky for you. I mean, he catches them. I mean, bottom line, the guy is on it. But they put these acoustic tags in the fish. I might be saying it wrong, but they could go out there with the wand, just like a tracking collar for a dog. They'd run through the creek. So everybody always said, oh, it pushes the trout out of the creeks. That's what all the old timers told you after a lot of rain. But they would go up these creeks after the rain, and this guy would have this wand. And this is for me reading his, his final report on it. And beep, 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 beep. Them fish weren't far from where they caught them before the rain. They just couldn't get them to bite.
Oh, gotcha.
So pH, salinity, electric conductivity, all those things do play. I mean, fish don't like a change in pH at all. You put them in a fish tank, you got to keep it, they don't like a change in salinity. But I think it more just shuts them down than it does makes them move. Because we busted that myth with his magic wand and that acoustic tag and that fish. It's busted.
Yeah, for sure.
So they didn't leave. They just couldn't catch them. And I'll have to check on Ricky with that. But from what I read, from what he said, they did not, they weren't catching them as well, let's just say. And that's how they would find the fish to tag more. And I mean, going along with that, some of those fish they tagged in the river went all the way up to, in just a matter of a couple months, up to Virginia. Some went south. So, what do the trout do? Everybody used to say, oh, they push out on the beach and they migrate. Well, a lot of them push up in the creeks and stay. There are those fish that migrate south. I think Texas is doing a study right now to see if those fish, the tide runners they call them, are genetically different than the fish that stay in the bays year round, which is what I'm really interested in and following.
For sure.
The results for that, because, a lot of these big trout that are up the river, some of those trout are tagged and they never leave a 2-mile radius.
Yeah.
They're just like a big old deer. They just sit there their whole life. And, they never leave.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But then a lot of those small males take off and go to Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean,
and come back, and other fish coming this way too. I think that's what helps us here in North Carolina with our fish population. Is fish sliding in and out.
Here, we know that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast there.
Yeah, there were some questions earlier on in the stream there about flounder closure and opinions and all that.
Oh yeah, I saw that. So they were saying that it's closed just for recreational, but it's actually closed commercially and recreationally for a year. It will be closed. They are going to open it up. I don't think this is 100% set yet, but they're saying that it's going to be open to recreational during the summer months when recreational anglers harvest the most fish, and then open to commercial during the fall when they harvest most fish. So is that the best option? I don't know.
Go check their website. That's the best place.
But it is closed right now.
Flounder you're talking about?
Flounder,
yeah. We're talking about flounder.
I'll say one thing about this and we'll leave it alone.
All right. No, yeah, sure. Share your opinion.
All right, here's my opinion. Okay, when a man cannot go out and feed his family first, a citizen of the state should be able to go out and catch a fish and take it home and feed his family. When he can't go out and do that first, there's a problem. I'm not knocking commercial. I'm not knocking anybody. If there's not enough of them to go around, I don't feel like it's right that I can go and buy that fish from a fish house to feed my family that's caught out of the same water that I'm not allowed to go catch it from and feed myself from right now.
Yeah. That's a beautiful opinion.
And I'll leave it at that.
That's awesome. That's a great opinion.
And I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
And if anybody wants to really get into some flounder debate,
we'll move along.
And we'll move along. But there's some great Facebook groups that are just fired up about flounder.
For sure.
Check them out. Check them out.
Billy's saying that I'm wrong about maybe I am wrong, but that is what I heard from a buddy at Marine Fisheries, so I could be wrong.
I wasn't saying you're wrong.
No, not you, Billy. I'm sorry, another Billy on the feed.
Oh, I was like, man, I don't know. I'm like, just go look at their website.
No, Billy Hammock. Yeah, go check out their website. Back to trout.
All right,
That's
back
what we
to
care
trout.
about.
Back to trout.
Back to trout.
We'll take care of flounder later. Dude, that's such a touchy subject. I just expected our stream to just like explode right there.
No. I don't think. I think okay. The young kids out there. I'm getting a little older now, and I look at myself and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a little older now. I was fishing on the pier for drum a couple years ago. We actually had a drum run at Topsail.
Oh, that's cool.
And I dusted off the old Hatteras rod, and I walked out there and still had my cast. And a kid walks up to me. He said, "Oh, cool! Your dad's name had my name on the rod. It was custom I had made years ago." Which, like I said, I felt like it was made 2 years ago to me.
Yeah.
A guy walked up and he said, "Oh, your dad's name was Ray too."
Oh,
I was like, "No, that's mine, buddy." But I think, like I said, Jud, you're young, your generation. To me, it's sad where a 4 trout limit is a limit. And these are important things to talk about. We don't want to harp on them, but it's sad when a kid goes out and catches 1 drum and he's had a successful day. When growing up, we could go in a place like, I won't name names, but we could go in those bays in the river and it was 50 trout, 50 drum in February and March. And there was commercial fishing back then. I'm not going to say that a lot of recreational pressure hasn't put a hamper on it too, but at the end of the day, if there's not a lot to go around, who do you take it from? You don't take it from the general public. And, I think we're at a turning point that's just a hard one for everybody. It's hard for the commercials. It's hard for us. And I think everybody needs to look at it in a light of, there should be enough for the general public to go around first. If there is an excess, then there should be an allowance for commercial sale. Yeah. But, currently in North Carolina, we're managing backwards. We're managing for the sale first, and we get the spoils, so to speak. And, that is the truth of it. And I think the younger generation needs to see that. They do not need to take the current, what we have right now as, 4 trout, flounders closed, 1 drum. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
We're not, seriously. Yeah, nobody wants to touch this, but at the same time, touch it, feel it, because it's ridiculous. Look at the states around you. Look at our state. As a young guy, I'm asking every young guy out there that's fishing, because a lot of young kids are doing a great job fishing right now and getting into it. Don't accept the current status as quo.
Yeah.
It's not. It needs to be a lot better, and get into it, get involved. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, man. No, dude, I like that, man. And I think that's a part of what, we're about too, is like, obviously we have a broadcast and where people can come share their opinions and dude, I think it's huge to take care. We stand on the side of the resource, and I want my kid to fish, man. I got him, a lifetime license.
And that's what it's about.
And he's 1.
That's what it's about.
I want him to be able to go out and catch a fish and fillet it and bring it home.
And the trout limit not be 1 in 2 years. Or a season on those where everything's closed. So
everyone is liking your opinion of the the one guy being able to catch his fish for dinner.
It's the most important thing. And I'm not reinventing the wheel here. This is something that Alaska, other states have gone with this model. We're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just the way it should be.
Yeah, we got to relook at everything. Techniques, we got strategies.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there to take a look
at. And that being said, there's a lot of recreational pressure now. Just right here. Us helping people go out and catch fish. There's going to be more pressure on them right here. So let's not discount that.
Sure.
I'm not a guy that's going to say the recreationals aren't doing their part, but it's don't take more than you need.
Absolutely. Well,
as a recreational
I think the difference
fisherman,
is you're going. I think, and I don't want to weigh in too heavy, but just my opinion, looking outside, my bottom dollar doesn't matter at no point. So my opinion is really not that heavy. I just have a microphone to talk into. So I think it's different though, because I think when you guys take people out, you are that voice of education. So even if you had, I don't know how many guides there are in North Carolina, but that's how many voices, if you can get on the same page and go, hey, let's educate people about this. Let's just because I take you out and we don't fill up 3 boxes doesn't mean we didn't have a good day. Like, there's only 4 people. Take 4 fish. Have a great day. We crushed
Exactly.
them. We got video. We got YouTube, Instagram.
We got memories.
Because I don't know about here, but dude, where I'm from, I remember as a kid, I'd go out and slay some freshwater trout, take them all home, get them all dressed up, put them in the freezer, and never eat them, or eat one because I was excited about it, and then so
We've
probably
all
happens here.
made that mistake in the past,
Sure.
and grown through it, and yeah.
So I think your guys is a little bit different. Sure, you're making money. Sure, your bottom dollar depends on people catching fish, but you're really out there entertaining people and having a great time.
Sure,
and you can be that voice.
I mean, talking to Lee
good.
Parsons the other day, I mean, he said it best. He said the day of filling a cooler is over in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it is.
Yeah.
Which I agree, man. I mean, I think it should. It's like, dude,
and it should be.
You don't go to the grocery store and buy every thing of milk and take it home.
That's right.
No, you don't. So why would you go put everything? So anyway, we can go on forever.
Yeah.
We can.
But back to trout, dude. Let's talk about what you use to catch trout.
All right.
Let's talk about your rod and reel setup.
Okay, rod and reel. I'll throw a shout out. Let's shout out again. Jason Dale made me a couple nice. I'll tell you what I love to use. An Immortal, so Rain Shadow Immortal blank. And I had Jason make me up a couple and did a really good job on them. It was a blank that I found through another guy, and then I had Jason make a couple of them. That, to me, it's a Rain Shadow Immortal. Get up with Jason Dale, Stillwater rods. Ask him. He likes Bushido. I don't like Bushido. We're going to differ on that one. Those Rain Shadows, they break easier, but they're perfect. To me, for the river in Stillwater. I used to fish Lamaglass, the drop shot specials, those 7-foot 702, 703 blank is what it was. Okay. Those to me, for working a shrimp, working something light, I'm running 10-pound braid, 12-pound leader, 15-pound leader sometimes, depending on where I'm at, if I'm in stumps and stuff. Sometimes I'll go to 15, but I'm mostly running 12-pound leader. I like the action. It doesn't subdue the action of whatever lure you're using.
Fluorocarbon?
Yes. Blue Label, Cigar. Whatever you want, just put fluorocarbon on because it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what kind. I don't like that pink stuff though. I don't get that. That one I don't understand. I think it doesn't work for me. I tried it and I don't know. Blue Label Cigar, something clear.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a clear fan.
Supple that put it in your hand, tie a good knot, and try to break it.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
If it's too rigid, some of those floors that are too rigid, you pull on them a little too, and they break. It breaks. Yeah, you get a little. I think it just kinks up a little bit.
I just couldn't tie a good knot, and I just equated it to maybe I'm not a good knot tier.
You sound like me.
Maybe the Blue Labels for us guys who don't tie great knots. But no, knot tying is very important to me. I use a FG knot sometimes, or a double uni. It's the two I use for fluorocarbon to braid. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big fan of loop knots. I know they work better. I know that you're going to catch more fish on them, but I study knots, and I love breaking strains and look at. So when you're dealing with, you just got to give yourself the best shot you can. And when you're talking about hooking a big trout and losing one because you've got a subpar knot, and it gets back to, well, if you didn't have a loop knot, maybe you wouldn't even have hooked that fish. But I don't know. I just haven't found a loop knot. The action loop knot from Lefty Cray is the one that I will use. My uncle taught me that one years ago. I will tie that one. I like it. But as far as, I usually tie a Palomar straight. Yeah. Where I can put some heat to it if I got to.
Yeah.
And that's that. That's me. And I try to make the action in the rod. 2,500 size reel, light stuff. I use Shimano. I use Penn. I use Daiwa. I use whatever. I really like, personally, I use the Shimano Stratix, the CI4 Pluses. I love them, but I hate the bearings in them, but I love the reels. And then that's that.
I think the key with those little light trout rods too is just a light reel. You get too big of a reel and it's a little heavy and it kind of throws everything off.
Yeah, but I mean, don't discount the rod. I mean, you've got to.
The rod for sure. But I'm saying reel choice.
I think
you just
the
don't want to
rod
get something too heavy.
To me, the rod is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to fight that thing
for sure.
And you hook a big one, and that's the difference in landing. You got a stiff rod, and you're trying to fight a big trout that's barely hooked in the lip. And when you actually net him, that lure pops out of his mouth. How many times have you seen a lure pop out of his mouth?
100 times.
I know you have.
Especially with trebles and a
there
stiff
ain't
rod.
no way you've caught as many trout as you've caught and not seen it.
Right,
so
right.
that rod is your link to that, especially when you're going with braid with no stretch.
Yes.
I think back in the days of mono, you had a little play there, but now you've got to put the play in the rod. I like a fast action rod, but that still has that old school parabolic bend to it.
Yeah.
Dude, so when you hook a trout, let me ask this. This is totally basic, but this is where I'm at. So are you really setting the hook in there? Because I know they got like pretty paper thin mouths. Like are you just letting them...
There's guys who just put the Bill dance on them.
That would be me.
I do that.
I mean, rip his lips and put the drag on him.
Yeah.
I set the hook pretty good. I mean, I put the hook in his mouth, but I'm kind of like, all right, I'm going to play him light. I just play him light. Myself, I play him light. Maybe one day I'll switch up to just horsing him in. But when he hits it, I set the hook.
Yeah.
No doubt. Okay. But I'm also setting it against a drag that's going off while I set it.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm like, I can hear my drag pull.
When you set,
yeah.
I think that a lot of times too has to depend on what kind of hooks you're using. Like treble hooks versus J hooks or single hooks and whatnot as well.
You got a J, drive it home.
Yeah.
You got a treble hook. Stick him
and then kind of let him do his thing a little bit.
Kind of hope.
There's too many of those with the treble where you stick him a little too hard and you start reeling and ting, just pop it out of his mouth. It's you can prick them real well with those, but with a J hook, man, you can't keep anything pegged like you can with a J hook.
Dude, so you mentioned Lefty Cray, and this would not be an Eastern Current show if I didn't bring up fly fishing. So, do you do any fly fishing for trout?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. I mean, I'm new to it. I'm a newbie.
We were talking about going out there and chasing some albacore, but
they
kind of disappeared on us.
Yeah, I had a buddy. I took him trout fishing one day, and he brought a couple 5 weights, and it was about this time, October. As a matter of fact, I was going to say it was like the week of October 20th, which is my favorite week of the year period. I took him out and learned a little something. We were catching them on jigs really good, and the current stopped. Guess what started producing? The trout bite shut off. He started catching trout. Dead current, killing them nonstop on a fly. And it was pretty cool to watch. I sat there and watched him catch a bunch and, got a limit. And I was like, all right, that's that. I think the false albacore out there. Let's go. So it was flat. We shot out, and he caught a few false albacore on a 5 weight.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh!
Then handed it to me, and I didn't know. I mean, I'm whipping around a antenna. I mean, I'm just as lost as anybody. But it was cool to watch. I finally got a few good casts in, stripped it, watched the thing come up, and take it right at the boat, peel the line. I mean, I was done.
Yeah. That's fun.
Done. So since then, I bought a few, did some top water flies that I made, and went out and caught some drum on top water.
Nice.
When I've got a good school of
yeah,
drum,
for sure,
I'll load it up. And it's what I originally wanted to get into it for was top water trout fishing. I tie these. It's like a popping flat shrimp is what it's called. There's a guy, Jesse Males that does this popping fly shrimp.
Okay.
And I said, that would be the best thing in the river when the big trout are out in the middle of the river in the dead of the summer to catch a big trout on, to me.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I'm gonna make these flies. Well, you can't cast it with a spinning rod.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a fly rod just out of necessity to throw the thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I didn't start fly fishing because I wanted to catch one on a fly rod. I want to catch one on that lure I think's going to work really well.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah.
Dude, that's cool.
It's cool how you were talking about the fly rod working so well and that different kind of type of current. And I think that you see that a lot with trout where that fly and striper too. Like all of a sudden you start throwing a fly rod or you find the right sinking line or a floating line with the fly. The way it falls through the water so naturally, kind of swinging through the current and falling. Or in no current, just the way it falls so slow. I think they love that. And the way feathers and the materials work. Yeah.
It's unreal
for sure
how the action of it is. And I'm just now getting into it.
Yeah.
It's just aggravating when I get the thing all wrapped around my head, control the motor and everything else.
Well,
so
Dude,
That's part of it.
I love fly fishing, man. It's one of my.
Oh yeah.
Judd and I went out, but dude, it's way different, man. It's way different than where I'm from. I was telling Judd we're fishing for albacore, and I was just in the stream, just in the creek there, or in the creek, you're just doing your deal, and then you get out there with albacore, and it's a whole new rush.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was wrapped up on everything.
Oh yeah.
Trolling motor, Judson's face, hooked my own butt of my rod.
Ear,
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, man, we have reached over 9 o'clock here.
Yeah.
And so, Judd, what else do we got to cover, man? Anything else? I think we pretty much.
You've done a great job of just kind of hitting everything.
Yeah, you've done. Awesome,
I was looking at a few of these last questions here to see if there's anything that. All right, here. Any tips for? I don't know if you do this at all, but any tips for big fish at night, fishing at night?
Yeah, so I fished up there at night for years. That's when I would go for a long time, especially before I started guiding. I have a little make raft, and I wouldn't put it until dark. Same guy I was telling you about busting the ice with. Me and him have done quite a few full moon topwater trips together. Just go fishing.
Just get out there and go fishing.
I mean,
just do it at night.
What I've found is through the summer, it can be really good. Through the winter, it can be really good. I've heard of trips that people have taken, not me personally, but what keeps me going back. And I haven't done it a lot since the hurricane a couple years ago because there's so much stuff in the water. And I feel better navigating during the day when I can see the stuff.
For sure.
There's a lot of stuff up there. So if you are in the river, don't go running around at night without knowing where you're going and having a good track. There's still a lot of stuff in the river, and I'd hate to send somebody out there and get them hurt.
Good call.
But, we used to run it quite a bit. And the thing you'll run into is there'll be so much bait out there at night. And you throw a topwater into it, and you pull it through there, and boom, he blows up on the bait 5 feet from, because there's so much for him to eat where they're at. But as far as what to do, it's not hard. I like August, September, and I like to get off of the main points of the river, and I stop about 100 yards from them, shut the motor off, and I listen. And you'll hear the trout busting. You'll hear them, doom, doom.
Yeah.
Put the trolling motor down. Don't run it on any more than 2 or 3. Approach quiet from way off, and you listen. You can't see anything. You're just listening, and it's a simple thing. If you get it in the vicinity, they're going to come to it and they're going to hit it. It's a lot of nights of disappointment and a few nights of like the coolest thing you've ever seen.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
There'll be like 30 fish nights of big fish.
That's
when the
cool.
bait's not so thick that you can actually fit them the key in on what you're. Yeah. And I think in my lifetime, I've probably had 15 to 20 nights that were just, I remember them and think about them. And I've had hundreds of nights up there where it was like you heard the trout busting. Yeah. And just, there was so much bait.
You just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But full moon, new moon, even when there's no moon up there, it doesn't matter. They'll still hit.
Dude, I'll ask you one more question, man, and then we can let you share some closing thoughts, and we'll do what we like to do. We'll leave people wanting more rather than wanting less, or we try to do that anyway. This question's been asked a few times by Daniel West. I just saw it again. What about the inlets and the intercoastal waterway?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a totally different thing that we could talk 4 hours on. And I know we didn't put out much information. That's the problem with an hour and trying to go through a lot of things. But
it's crazy how quick it goes by.
Yeah. Inlets. Inlets. It's tidal fishing. It's current. It's I think the biggest thing, if you want to know about inlets, is go back and listen to what Ryan said on the last show about sweeping the current. That sweep is probably the most important thing that you need to focus on. And I think he put it about as best as you can put it. And it's the same way I always put it. When you throw it up current and you let it sweep, it's got to hit the bottom. And you need to feel the bottom at some point. So if you throw a 1/8 ounce out, which I never throw at the inlet, but let's just say you throw an 1/8 ounce out and you never feel the bottom, go up to a quarter. I mean, throw a 1/4 ounce out there, or 3/16, whatever will get you to the bottom, and just boom, 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 as it's swinging. Not just a steady on the bottom, but just you'll bump it up, and it's got to fall and hit the bottom. Got to fall and hit the bottom. Got to fall and hit the bottom. That's the most important thing. Other than that, put you on a hard bait and work a hard bait off the bank where there's a mud flat to the drop off. Work it off the drop offs. See if they're laying there. But that's a whole different, you know, like I said.
Yeah, maybe we can have you back on and get into
we could
some of
talk
that.
4 hours
sure.
about that, you know. But yeah, I think go back and listen to what Ryan said about sweeping the current.
Yeah.
I think he did a great job explaining it. It's about the best you can explain
Okay.
it. Go to the inlet, do what Ryan said do, anywhere there's current, and that'll kind of work.
Yeah. And
Make sure you're hitting bottom, but not dragging bottom. You don't want to dredge it, as he said. I think that was a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's episode 15, I believe. And dude, so one more thing here. Judy
I was about to read
Sugg.
Yeah.
She says, hate to see this end tonight. It's so great to see and hear our Ray talking about something we all love so much and is so much a part of our family. Really brings back some great memories.
Yeah.
Who is that? Is that your...
That's Captain Billy's wife. Yeah,
Okay.
Captain Billy. Yeah, that's my Aunt Judy.
That's
awesome.
your Aunt
Yeah.
Judy. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, Judy, we appreciate you watching. That's cool to have that on there. That's what we're trying to be about. So Ray, what's some closing thoughts, man?
I mean, closing thoughts are
Get it right, get it tight.
get it right, get it tight. No, I mean, yeah.
Get it right, get it tight, get it in.
No, I mean, tie good. Not there's so much information out there, and you know, I could sit here and say what I use, but there's so much out there that guys are using and killing the fish on that I haven't even. Like, I'll walk in Intercoastal and they're like, Ray, have you seen these? No. Going to East Coast and Chris, good buddy. I got to give him a shout out to. I mean, Chris is like, hey, check these out. And, you know, it's like, okay, well, I haven't even heard of that. I'm out of the loop, you know, but I've got things that work. And I have, you know, if it fits the mold of what I like to use in a certain area.
Yeah.
But, you know, that being said, I think these kids actually have an advantage with all the things coming out because their minds are just sucking up things and they're so open to things that, you know, I'm hearing about stuff that works better than what I'm doing. And I pick it up and I'm not scared of changing. I grab it. If something works, I use it. So, you know, get on the internet, find lures that work, use them. If they don't work, well, you spent some money on something you didn't need to. We all got a big bag of that stuff sitting around.
Yep.
But, you know, go fishing. If the weather's bad, go fishing. If it's good, go fishing. I mean, just go fishing and pay attention to conservation and don't take more than you need. And, you know, and start looking into how our laws are made in the state and why the fishery is in the state that it is. I mean, to me, it's really important to pay attention to those things. You know, we've got 9 people that are appointed by the governor that make the regulations in the state. And when the flounder closure happened, I read numerous things on Facebook with 250 to 400 comments, and not one individual understood where the regulations actually came from. So I just challenge people to educate themselves on learning how the system works, knowing where to go if you want to complain, where to complain.
Yeah, not just Facebook.
Yeah,
Right.
And get involved. And you know, I think we have a great estuary system here. They say our water quality is better than a lot of states around us, and what we could have here could be phenomenal. And we're sitting in a really pretty spot. I've seen it phenomenal when I was a kid, and it was even better than that from the stories I had from the old timers when I was a kid. So just remember my generation from that generation to y'all's generation.
Big difference.
Let's not call it a day yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get involved and let's get this ball rolling.
I'm gonna get some hats made that says "Make our water great again."
I want a hat with a bottom rig on it. Everybody's got all the flies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just a Carolina
Just a
rig.
Carolina
I wanted a Carolina rig or a 2-hook bottom rig with a shrimp.
Oh, little chopper rig. That's
Or
perfect.
2-hook bottom rig with 2 gotcha plugs on it would be even better.
I always said at that Topsail pinfish tournament, if I ever won that Carolina skiff, I'd get it wrapped with 2-drop rigs and pinfish eating the 2-drop rigs. But
Oh man, what a show, man! What a show! Thank you so
That
much
was
for
fun, man.
No, thank you guys
for being
Thank
on the
you
show.
guys.
So much fun to have you, dude. We'll definitely have you back.
Yes, sir.
And get into some more Whatever, dude. Whatever we need
whatever
to.
we get into. That's the
Whatever
fun
we're
thing about
into.
this whole podcast. We can just get into whatever we
No,
want
thank
to.
you guys so much.
For sure,
I appreciate
for
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Dude, it's awesome. So if you guys want to book Ray, go to Springtide Guide Service. Check him out on Facebook.
Yeah,
check him out on
definitely.
Instagram. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about, knows how to fish, been doing it for almost as long as I've been alive. I got a few years on him. So go check him out. And then in this area too, Jud Brock is also fishy. Don't call me if you want to fish. Just call me if you need t-shirts or a house. I can take care of you. If you want to buy something, call me. So awesome, man. Well, dude, we appreciate you, and we'll jump back over there in a minute. Jud, thanks again, man.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks for having us at
Thanks
your
for
house.
carrying us. The tech
much
stuff
fun.
is just getting pristine. You're
Dude,
killing it.
you can tell on the show when you go back and watch it, and not to say that everyone else I'm not paying attention to, but I was like really into this, so I was like miss switching, and then your face was like on there while he was talking. That's how you guys know I'm over here like nerding out on what's being said. I'm not paying attention. So appreciate everybody watching. You can check this out. I'm going to go home promptly and upload this to our podcast, the audio version, and it'll also be available on YouTube. So 8 o'clock in the morning when you're driving to work or getting on the boat or whatever, you can listen to that on the way out. Anything else we need to cover, man? I think we're good.
I think we nailed it, man.
Go to our online store, buy some stuff, support the show. And yeah, we appreciate it.
For sure,
Episode
guys.
17,
Thank you so much.
done.
Looking forward to next show. It's going to be a good one. Talking about trout.
Dude, and who's on the show?
Oh my gosh!
I put you on the spot.
You put me on
man.
the spot.
Don't worry, we'll have an ad out soon.
It's Jay Carter from South Carolina.
Yeah, from South Carolina.
Yep, from Redfin Charters.
Redfin Charters.
Yep. Sorry,
Yep,
I knew all
that's gonna
that.
be
I
good.
just
I know you did. We were
You
talking
put me on
about
the
it before
spot.
the show,
Yep.
and then I sprung one on you.
Yep.
All right, guys, go fishing. We'll talk to you soon.
Later.